Greetings and welcome back to Hexed Encountered. This is part 2 of our look at the gameplay example for the game by Swords and Bayonets. This is the Battle of Big Bethel. We are still in turn 1. If you didn't watch part 1, this would be a good time to do that, just so you're kind of up to speed on where we are and what we're doing. We are about to do some movement here as part of the first activation for the rebels. And we're looking at a portion of their positions here. So you have the 1st Battalion, or A Battalion of the 1st North Carolina here. And they're going to move. So the way this works is we're going to change facing by one vertex. So it's pointing this way right here. We're going to move to, actually it was pointing this way. I'm sorry. It's going to point this way. So it's pointing at the road. And then it's going to move to the road. Actually, it was pointing that way. So it's going to move here. And then it's going to go down the road. And it's going to end here at the bridge. Okay. Then this unit will move down to take its place and keep its facing. So it's going to go right there. And they have enough movement to do that. It's 6 movement points. This one took advantage of the road movement. That's why after we turned, we went down the road. Okay. So then we've got the 3rd Virginia, which I'm going to adjust the camera for here. Okay, so we're just going to rotate this guy so that he's facing this way. So that's a move of 2 vertices. The first one's free. The second one costs a movement point. He does have 6, so it's not a big deal, but it is worth noting that costs movement. Now the Yankee positions are this way. So they are facing each other now, dead on, straight down this vertex right here. Straight down this spine. If you followed it all the way down, you'd come to the right end of the Union line, which is occupied by the 5th New York, the Zouaves. And so now we're going to move our cavalry, and I need to reset again for that because they are off to the north. So cavalry's here. Okay. Now we're going to move them around here and then down, and they're going to end up right here so that they can be in position to do a charge depending on whether the Yankees get across the bridge, which you can no longer see, but it's right below my finger right there. If you remember where the battalion of the 1st North Carolina went, that is the bridge. So let's take a quick look at the cavalry here before we move them so you can see what these guys look like. So there's the cavalry, peninsula, and I forget what this one is, but you can see the horses on there. They have morales of 5. They have 2 strength points and 9 movement points. So they are here. So their movement is going to take them around this way. So what clear is 1. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then they're going to turn and go this way. 4, 5. Then 1's going to split and go here. That would be 6 for him. And then they're going to move down 1, 2, right there. And he's going to go basically the same way. They end up there. So they had enough movement to get there. Now they are in position. Should the Yankees show up by crossing the bridge, they'll be in position to do something about it. Now that completes the 1st Confederate activation. So the next draw gives them their 2nd activation right here. Okay, so I'll put that in play, and I forgot to draw the other one out, but they all look the same in this particular scenario. So in this particular battle, so we have one that's been played, and I know you just can't see it, but they're on the play aid there. So, all right, so anticipating command range issues for next turn, Brigadier D.H. Hill is dispatched to coordinate efforts from the county bridge. All right, so here's Magruder, and Hill is with him. Okay, so you can see Magruder, 2 stars, so he's a division commander. And then we have our brigade commander here, Hill. And he is going to move down here to join the 1st North Carolina A Battalion, because we have to worry about command range and keeping everybody within command. So I'm going to zoom out here so you can see a little bit better. Okay, so now in this shot, you can see everybody. Well, you can see all the Confederate forces. And you can see the top, the most forward piece of the Union Army. Actually, I think my plexi slid on me a little bit, but that is where they are. Okay. So rather than explain how that movement worked, we'll just read it right off here. It says, Hill is dispatched to coordinate efforts from the county bridge, hex BB 1311. He stays 3.5 leader movement points away from division leader Magruder, who has a radius of 6 movement points. This will be measured as follows. Okay, and you can see it on the map image here. 1 movement point traced 1308 around the edge of the earthworks hexi, which saves 1 movement point. Another movement point traced to BB 1209. BB, of course, is Big Bethel. Then a half movement point each to follow the road to trace to BB 1311. Remember, leaders spend only a half movement point to move or trace command along a road. They trace command range to units using the leader movement point schedule as shown on the specific battle's terrain effects chart. Okay. So our terrain effects chart is here. And you can see there's a leader column. And so this is what they use, right? So to trace through woods, for example, it costs 2, right? Okay, so that's how that is worked out. Now that that's done, it's time to give the Parrott gun another shot at the onrushing bluebellies. The target is the same, the 3 New York B, so that's right in the middle. Neither unit's moved, so the fire combat calculation is the same as before, and we saw that in part 1. So it is 1 strength point of 10-pound Parrott. That is this gun right here. So if I pick this up so you can see it, you've got the 1 there in brackets. That's artillery strength point. The P10 indicates the type of gun. It is Parrott 10-pounder. Okay, then you look on the artillery fire table. It's a 0 modifier for the weapon range. And I showed this in part 1, so I'm not going to show it again. But I'll just explain it. And they get a +1 for firing from earthworks. A 3 is the die roll in this case, resulting to an adjusted 4, which is a miss. There's no return fire because the infantry is out of range. Rebel activation is completed. Next out of the AM pool, the Union. So this would be the last Union activation, and there's 1 activation marker for the rebels. So here's our last Union activation. So I'm going to put that in the box there. Okay, let's reset our shot. Okay, I have zoomed out a little bit so that we can see things a little bit clearer. Okay, so this is the final Union activation for this turn, and because both players know the mix of EMs drawn from both will surmise this fact. Also, since the Confederates just enjoyed 2 activations consecutively, the Union player must activate next. So you get 2 activations, and then the enemy gets theirs regardless of what you draw. In this case, we drew the Union anyway, so they're going to get their 3rd and final one, and then the Confederates will get their 3rd and final one. Okay, so here's the first decision for the Union. How aggressive does he want to be? Forward lines close enough to try to mount a charge at the Confederate position, but all 3 infantry units are disordered in the charge and shock attack. But I'm sorry, if they all get disordered on the charge and shock attack, the brigade will be rendered combat ineffective. Also, as this is the 3rd activation of the turn, moving or conducting combat will start to accrue fatigue for the brigade. Okay. But the Union has a lot to do to win this battle, so what will the Union player do? He decides to be somewhat aggressive. He will try to rally the 3rd New York B, so they were disordered when the artillery attacked them in the previous Confederate activation, the one that I did in part 1. So they are going to try to rally. Now you can see on the back here, in case you didn't watch part 1, that small D there on the left indicates that they are disordered. Okay, so they are right there. Now the way this works, he's going to try to rally that unit, and he's going to try to take the rebel position with only the 5th New York Zouaves, his most seasoned unit, to move adjacent. Now you can see here, let's do a comparison, for example. So we have the New York, 2 New York regiments, okay? This is 1 battalion of it on the left, the 3rd New York Battalion A. You see the white box with the G4 in it? That is their, I forget what it's called now, but that's their the number they roll against for rallying and disorder and so on and so forth. I'm drawing a total blank right now. And rather than look it up, we're just going to press on. The G indicates green. So these are green troops. These have nothing next to them, so they are regulars. Okay, so that's the troop quality, essentially, here. And that's what it would be called in Great Battles of History, would be TQ, troop quality. Here, I think it's something different, but it's the same concept. So this one is a G, which means green, and this one, and you can tell by the number as well, it's higher, it's a 6. These are more seasoned, hardy troops than these guys. These guys are green, so they're less experienced. So I'm going to put these guys back, and so this is the unit that they are going to use to attack, and you can see its strength points are only 4. The other New York units in the 3rd are stronger. A is a 7 and B is a 6. That's A and B of the 3rd New York Infantry. All right, so now to do this, we have to launch a shock attack, which means we have to put them under attack orders. They are currently under advance orders. So this is going to be a demonstration of how brigade orders can be changed, okay? Because we put them under brigade. The brigade order we gave them at the start of turn 1 was advance, because we were coming off map, we were marching up the road, and they needed advance orders. March orders is another type of order, but we couldn't use it because it's not allowed in this particular scenario. So we have to change them to brigade orders. Now, how does that work? You roll a die, of course, but the die roll in this case will not be modified because Pierce's orders change rating is 0, and he's not stacked with a division leader to help him either. And the roll is a 6, which is just enough to change the order. So here is the brigade order change table. So we use D10s in this game. Higher than or equal to 6, change. 5 is change and stand. 4, loose cannon. So these are different things that can happen, and if we get to it here in this kind of walkthrough, we'll get to it. But if not, then down the road, perhaps we will play something that demonstrates that. So they can now change the orders to attack. Now, there are counters for all of this stuff. So this, or counters, I should have, I said counters, I meant to say marker. This is the attack marker. So if we just put that kind of next to him here for now, just to indicate that he is going, well, you could put it behind him, whatever. It just needs to be somewhere where it's obvious that the 5th New York is now under attack orders. Okay. So he's going to have to he bursts out of the woods and charges the rebel position. They enter BB 1316, which is this one right here. So he's going to move here first. He moves here first, and you have to maintain your facing. Okay. And they have to face the vertex of a hex. So he moves there first. Then he continues. Oh, they were actually further back. maybe. Actually, no, he's fine. So he's in 1316, and then he's going to go to 1216, which is right here. And at that point, the rebels decide he's come close enough and declare the Parrot will use approach fire. This is a series rule 10.45, so I can show you where that is here in the rule book real quick. So here is section 10, which is about combat. And 10.4, non-phasing fire, 10.4.5 is right here. Approach fire. Artillery may fire at an enemy unit, line of sight facing permitting, that when using movement, enters a hex anywhere within 3 hexes of the guns. So, obviously, he is doing that. He's only he's 2 hexes away from the guns now. So he is in range and line of sight, and they can fire at him, and they will. Okay, so the idea being, if this is successful at disordering the onrushing Zouaves, they will not be able to move adjacent to conduct shock combat. Okay, so approach fire. The enemy unit must have moved anywhere within 3 hexes, as we just mentioned, and that is canister range, be in line of sight, and in the artillery's frontal fire zone. So since they're facing vertex, these 2 hexes are their front fire zone. Okay? Now, some artillery has the ability to use rapid fire and can fire twice, but looking at the range effects chart, so let's look at that here. So here's our range effects chart, and we have small arms, and then you have artillery. Now, this is a 10-pound Parrot. Okay, the range is 2. And I think it's 2, right? Not eligible for rapid fire because they don't have the RF. So if you look here, you see that 12-pound howitzer RF, 24 RF, RF, RF. But then you get down here to the 3-inch rifle, the 10-pound Parrot, the 20-pound Parrot. None of those have the ability to do rapid fire. Okay, so that answered that question. So a single salvo with the single gun is going to have to do it. The calculation for the approach fire is follows. The 10-pound Parrot gun with a strength of 1 fires at a range of 2 hexes, which gives it a +2 modifier. We saw that on the chart, even though I didn't really point it out. Okay, and it gets a +1 for firing from earthworks, so +3 is the total modifier. Also, the fire is resolved on the small arm side of the fire table because it's canister. So again, here on the fire table, you have your small arm side and your artillery side. So this not being big shot, it's not artillery, it's canister, so it's basically like a big shotgun. It's going to use the small arms chart. Okay, so they end up rolling a 2, which isn't a good roll. It becomes a 5, which is a result of D-2. So if we look at that here. Okay, so we rolled a 2, which became a 5. Okay, so here's our 5, and the fire strength was 1, so it's a D-2. See, 1, strength of 5, D-2. Now there's a whole bunch of symbols here with the 5. For artillery, see 10.69. For artillery using rapid fire, the unit's out of ammo. So you would you'd be out of ammo if this were rapid fire. It is not. So we would check rule 10.6.9 in the series rules. The 5th New York has to roll a UDD, which is 8. Okay, and they get a -2. That's what the D -2 means. That's disorder check. UDD is what they call it, Universal Disorder Die Roll. The New York, the Zouaves, the 5th New York, they roll an 8. Their cohesion, there you go, that was the word I had forgotten. Their cohesion is a 6. 8 -2 equals 6. So they actually pass. They pass, which means they can continue to come at the, they pass their test and continue their movement to hex BB 1115, which is adjacent to the rebel earthworks. So now they're there, they're in range. Okay. The Union player immediately announces his intention to launch an infantry charge during the shock phase to come. So shock is done at like fire. It's just, it reminds me again of big great battles of history where fire and shock are done separately. They're both combat, but they're different types of combat. In more modern games, more tactical, World War II type games, you would call it melee, perhaps, but it's shock combat. It's kind of crashing together. So this means he forgoes any fire combat, so he's not going to fire. Remember that units under attack orders can both move and fire if they wish, but to get the +1 shock modifier for an infantry charge, the unit must not have fired during the same activation. So you can do both, but if you do, you lose out on your +1 die roll modifier. Okay, so the shock segment happens after all movement, fire combat, and rallies are completed. So we move on to finish the rest of the brigade's actions. Okay, so now we'll have our rally example because we're going to try to rally this guy right here. And just stick that right there for now. So we're going to try to rally this fine fellow right there. And the way that works is you, Pierce is supposed to be with him. So Pierce is right there. I maybe messed that up beforehand, but Pierce is the commander, the brigade commander. He is with him. He's with there, so he helps them on their rally attempt. He reduces the die roll rather because it lowers better by 1, which is his number of stars. Since he's a brigade leader, he has 1 star. So he has 1 star, and the die roll is a 6. So we do have the die here. I'm not rolling it. I'm just using what the example says to use. So there's our 6. It gets modified down to a 5. Their number is a 3. So they do not succeed. And I just dropped Pierce on my foot. Okay. All right, so that rally does not succeed. So the unit remains disordered and its activation is finished, as is Pierce's potential for movement. So now with their failed rally attempt, the Union player decides not to send the 3rd New York A Battalion forward to join in the shock combat. Why? Because if the shock combat is fully resolved, the turn would end with all of the brigade's non-artillery units disordered. And that means the brigade will be combat ineffective. More on that later. It's best to ensure that doesn't happen. So as we're playing through this, I'm sure you're sensing some of the complexities, I guess, of the game. My reading of the rules, I'll tell you what my opinion is that yes, the rules are complex, but they are. What's the best way to put this? We have some rule sets that are complex, and you wonder why a certain rule might exist or why the rule is the way it is. In the case of this game, and this is the series rules we're talking about, I can easily see the reason for all the rules. Like everything is in there to model something that you can intellectually grasp and know the reason why. It's modeling various things, and so you get a much deeper, and it's still cardboard on paper, but you get a more realistic experience, I guess, is how I would put it. This is a complex system, but a very well designed system, I guess, is what I'm saying. That's my impression so far, and obviously I have not played it much, but I have read the rules, and they are impressive, complex but impressive. Okay. Digression over. Okay, so we know we don't want to have our brigade be combat ineffective. Combat ineffective, even if you don't know what it means, you can intuit that it probably is not a good thing. Okay. One more step remains. The 2 USA battery will bombard the rebel works to try and soften them up for the upcoming shock. So the A battery, and the A battery is down here, which is out of shot. So give me a second. Okay, so A battery is right here. Now it's going to be shooting right up in this direction. Okay. So the line of sight is clear and unobstructed. So you do see that there is some terrain here, but if we look at the terrain effects chart, right? So we have some farm field effect on possible blocking terrain. No. Then you have some orchard, possible blocking terrain. No. So no obstruction of our line of sight there. Okay. So, and the line misses the 5th New York Zouaves. We don't want to fire at our own men because we're going right up this way. So you can see the line, even without, laying a string or anything, you can basically tell that this is, because we're going up this way, we're skirting the hex that the 5th New York is in. So we don't have to worry about that. And that is important. Okay. So the combat is calculated. 2 strength points of H-12 howitzers at a range of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So if we look here, range effects, H-12 howitzer, max range is 7. So we're out here and we see we get a -1. Okay. So they get a DRM of -1. The earthworks, okay, also add a -1. So now we're at a -2. And the target qualifies as a dispersed target for artillery fire purposes. That is explained in Series Rule 8.34. I don't want to dig into the rules too much. But if you have this, if you have any GBACW game, you can look up that rule and see it, even if you're looking at the rules for, Into the Woods or, Stones River or whatever it may be. You can look it up. So that's a total of a -3. Now we roll a 2, adjusted to a -1, and that is a bad miss. So you can see -1 here on a strength of 2 is a miss by like 4. So that is a no harm, no foul kind of thing right there. So now with movement and fire completed, it's time to resolve the shock. So our shock combat example has 6 steps. Step 1, the Union designates the attacking unit and their intended targets. Okay, so that is the 5th New York, the Zouaves. They're targeting the Richmond Sea Artillery and the Wythe Infantry in hex BB 1015. So that is these 2 units right here. Okay. That is our target. Now, keep in mind, we see a lot of G's on these units. This is June of 1861. The war has only been going on for a couple months. So, unsurprisingly, the troops aren't all that seasoned yet. Okay, so this is simple and obvious because there are only a few units involved, but in larger battles with entire lines of contending units, it pays to understand the requirements for shock, the combining of forces in multi-hex attacks, and target designation laid down in Series Rules 11.2 and 11.3. Okay, step 2, the defending units may have the option to retreat before shock. The Confederates are in the best possible defensive position, and artillery can't retreat before shock, so they're going to stand and fight. Now we go to step 3, green commitment check. So here's where that green units with a G next to their cohesion rating must pass a UDD. There's that universal disorder die roll again. For each unit designated to shock, if they fail, they don't participate. So the Zouaves are the only infantry unit on the field that is not green, so they do not need to check. They are literally the only unit, the only artillery unit, infantry unit. Get it right, Joe? The only infantry unit that's not green. Okay, the defenders now make a pre-shock cohesion check. So the topmost unit makes the UDD for the entire stack, and the results, good or ill, apply to the entire stack. Richmond C is the top unit, and it receives a -1 DRM for the earthworks. They roll a 9, modified to 8. This is 2 greater than Richmond C's 6 cohesion, and they fail the test. Both rebel units are now disorganized. So again, we look here, 6, right? Now the unit under them is a G5. So that was the best one to have on top anyway, and now they're both disorganized. So you can see the D, he becomes a G4, and everything else, well, he loses a movement point as well, and he is a D as well. Okay, so they are now both disorganized, which isn't great. Okay, so now we have the defensive fire example. This is bad for the Confederates in multiple ways, being disorganized, that is. Not only are disordered, I'm sorry, I keep saying disorganized, it's disordered. Not only are disordered defenders penalized in the shock calculation to come, but artillery cannot fire when disordered, and so they cannot use pre-shock reaction fire in step 5. The also disordered Wythe infantry can, but with only 1 strength point of ER rifles. Their fire calculates as follows. So they have the ER, which is the European rifle. Okay. So the range is 1, so they get a +1. So ER +1 at 1. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. Firing while disordered is a -1. Right? So that has to be on here somewhere. Oh yeah, here, -1. Disordered unit, firing. And what else? They're also green, that's another -1. They are behind earthworks, that's a +1. That is a 0 net modifier. So they had a +1 for their rifle, a -1 for disordered, and a -1 for green, and then a +1 for being in their earthworks. So they get a net result of 0. They roll a die, which is a 4, and a 4 on the 1 column. Small arms, 1, 1. It's almost always going to be bad, and it is. It's a miss. So they took their shot. They had no effect. Now we move to shock step number 6, final resolution. First, we compare the strengths of the two forces and use the ratio to determine the first DRM. Zouaves have 4 strength points. Okay, take my word for it if you don't remember, but they do. And the Confederates have 2, one with each of their units. That's a tidy ratio of 2 to 1. That creates a +2 modifier in the Union's favor. Note that artillery involved in shock get 1 SP for every 4 guns, rounded down to a minimum of 1. The crew of the single Parrott get a bit of a break in this regard. Confederates have a disordered unit and the Federals do not, so that's an additional +1 DRM. But the earthworks provide the rebels a -1 DRM. The Federals now get that +1 infantry charge benefit for not firing, and there are no positional modifiers because the attackers are assaulting head-on and not from the flank, rear, or combination of directions. The final DRM to apply is -1 because the brigadier is not involved in any shock combat. Pierce is still basically trying to rally that other unit, the 3rd New York B. So our net DRM for this shock is +2. So this is a look at our shock table, the shock resolution table, and you can see here's the resolution, here are the adjustments that we already went through, although I didn't show you this until just now. I do like the artwork. It's pretty cool. Anyway, this is what we're going to be rolling against. Okay, so 2 is rolled to resolve the shock, adjusted to 4, and that becomes a bloody standoff. Bloody standoff. Each side uses 1 strength point total, not from each unit, and is disordered. If more than 1 unit's involved on one side, apply the step loss to the unit with the highest cohesion rating, which is an exception to Rule 8.36. If artillery is alone in the hex or is the top unit in the hex, it loses 1 gun. Well, it is the top unit, so if it loses 1 gun, it's going to be eliminated. I believe, if I remember this correctly. So each side loses, it says for the rebels, this is catastrophic. Each side loses 1 strength point and is disordered. Having only 2 disordered 1 strength point units in the hex, this means the entire stack is eliminated. The top unit by the 1 strength point loss, and the infantry due to a second disorder. Even if the white infantry were to pass the second disorder UDD, it must lose 1 strength point, all it has, and then retreat. So these 2 units have been eliminated. Okay, and we know the Zouaves lose a strength point as well. And they are disordered. They must advance into the earthworks and can change facing by 1 vertex, which they use to face the Confederate 3rd Virginia, which is in this direction. So they move in here and they change facing. Go that, they are disordered. They've also lost 1 step. Now, because they took a disorder as a result, and they've already lost 1 strength point, they get in the post-shock disorder step, you disorder everybody who was involved. So they get a second disorder, which in this case involves losing a second strength point. So they lose 2 strength points, which leaves them with 2. So we get these handy dandy numerical counters. Again, reminds me of the great battles of history. And that just indicates that they're no longer a 4 strength unit. They are now a 2 strength unit. Okay, so now the Union will activate Washburn's brigade, which I think is, well, they're here. Yeah, that is all of them. You can see all of their units. Okay, so the key takeaway from what Washburn is going to do is they're going to charge in this direction to get to this ford. Okay, we do have a defender at the bridge, so they're going to pull an end run and try to go up here to get to the ford Wythe Creek, and get into the flank of the Confederates here. So they will move first. The 2nd USB Artillery takes the right fork of the road and ends up in BB 1816, which is right here. So they're going to go this way. Now they can move through this unit, so it's all road. So he goes up and then goes down here, and he ends up there, and I think he'll be facing that way. Or, well, no, this way. Okay. Now, Washburn and the 7th New York end up right below him here. Okay, and they all have enough movement to do this. Then we have the Vermont and Mass. So Mass actually stacks with the New York, it looks like. These are all green troops, by the way. And Vermont is right behind them on the road. And they're all facing this way. Okay. So that is the end of the Union's turn. Now, they both brigades conducted activity in all 3 activations, which means they both incur a level of fatigue, the OK level, which is in Series Rules 17.22. So they're both going to get OK fatigue statuses, which look like this. Okay, so I'll just mark Washburn and Pierce. Both are okay. Okay, so you also have to worry about fatigue. As I said, there are a lot of rules in this, but they all have a clear meaning, even if there is a lot to remember. Okay, so our last activation marker is drawn. We know what it's going to be. It's going to be the third and last Confederate activation marker. That's the last thing in the cup. Okay. Now, the rebel player is eyeing a counterattack. Okay, we can counterattack over here with our 3rd Virginia. He can come down there and attack the Zouaves. He does have a 2-to-1 advantage in strength points. Okay, so now if we look at D.H. Hill's counter, which is right here, okay, because he's the closest commander to that particular unit. So here is his counter. Okay. And what we're looking at is he has a +1 modifier to the orders change, which is right there, that +1. Okay, so we're going to roll, and we rolled a 2, which modifies to a 3. So he was trying to change his brigade orders to attack. Okay, but here is our brigade change order again, right? So he rolled a 2, +1 gave him a 3. That is retain. So they cannot attack, and they're kind of stuck there. All right, so with that plan scuppered, the rebels decide not to use their third activation and avoid gaining fatigue as the Union have. They pass. But if the rebel player needed to move the leaders to set up a good chain of command for the next turn, or needed to rally any disordered units, they could have performed these operations and still not incurred fatigue, though that's an exception to the rule on that one. Okay, so now we have reached the step 4 of the sequence of play, which is the end of turn segment. So if we go back over here, you can see we're at the end of turn segment. You have commander movement phase, replacement recovery, combat effectiveness phase, and turn record phase. Now, in this case, we can quickly move through this. There are no corps or overall commanders, so 4A is skipped. No leaders were killed, no units in reserve, no guns abandoned. 4B is also irrelevant. Breastworks can't be built in this particular game edition. So again, nothing to do there. Finally, Pierce made sure his brigade did not end the turn with all of its non-artillery disordered and avoided brigade combat ineffectiveness. Confederates took some losses, but not nearly enough for their lone brigade to become combat ineffective. We move to 4D, in which we move our turn markers on to the next turn, 1000. There is one final step that applies specifically to Big Bethel, victory point determination. The rebel player gets a half of a victory point for each of the 22 earthworks hexes he still controls at the end of each turn, rounding down. The Union gets 3 victory points per earthworks hex they control, or were the last to move through. So the rebels now control 21 earthworks hexes, which is 10 victory points, and the Union took 1 for 3 victory points. The Union gets 2 additional victory points for eliminating the Parrott gun, and 2 more for the Wythe infantry unit. So the score at the end of turn 1 is Union 7, Confederates 10. Now that will end this video, and the next one will show us some action from turn 2. And then, I'm playing this by ear in terms of how far we'll go. I'll go until the end of the play example, which I think runs 3 turns. Unless the viewership drops off and that indicates that you guys just aren't interested anymore. But if you are, let me know. Comment. Drop a comment. Let me know that you are interested in seeing this continue. And we'll play through, as I said, all 3 turns. Otherwise, I'll probably cut it short and move on to something else. So that's going to do it for this one. I do thank you for watching. Hopefully you'll consider liking, sharing, and if you're not a subscriber, maybe click the subscribe button and join the ranks. That would be greatly appreciated. Actually, any of those things would be greatly appreciated. I thank you for watching. I thank you for your support. And until next time, I'm Joe. This is Hexed Encountered, and as always, happy gaming.